Hello everyone. In today's video, we're diving into an unsolved murder from Quebec, when a teen would be brutally murdered on the night of her 18th birthday, and decades later, her case still remains unsolved. Elen Monast was born September 10th of 1959 to her mother Lise and her father Roland. Her and her family living in the South Shore area of Chambly, Quebec. Elen is remembered as loving animals and children. She always brought the kids she babysat gifts. She lived a relatively normal, peaceful life and loved her family. Her father Roland was known as the cool dad in town. Even when her friends were visiting their home, they would spend as much time with him as they did the kids. At the time, he was running a popular snack bar that had jukeboxes, pool tables, and table football that served hot dogs and fries. He also made a living as a dynamite expert, but collected and stored scrap metal on the side. In the winter, he would sell Christmas trees to the community. And the family would joke about always ending up with the worst tree because he was eager to sell all the best trees to his customers. Her sister Nicole would often recall coming home late at night to Elen waiting up for her to make sure she'd gotten home safe. The two would sometimes even stay up to the early hours of the night, sharing a coffee and chatting about boys, school, and what they wanted out of life. Elen's biggest milestone was that she was looking forward to turning 18 that September. She dreamed of studying to become a veterinarian, but spent the summer packing beans at a cannery, working bingo nights at the local arena, and babysitting as much as she could. She'd tell Nicole of how she craved the freedom and new adventures she'd figured would come with adulthood. She was so excited to turn 18 that she had already begun writing the number 18 on the photos that she'd take. Then finally, on September 10th of 1977, Elen celebrated in the afternoon with her parents and siblings at the family home with cake and presents. Nicole had actually gotten married a month earlier, and so that day, on Elen's birthday, she invited her to a corn roast that her and her husband had planned. However, since it was her birthday, Elen had plans with her friends that evening. She would tell Nicole to stay safe, which was something that she had recently started telling her sister, and Nicole told her to enjoy her birthday. Afterwards, their brother Yves would drop Elen off at a local restaurant around 9 p.m. to meet up with her friends. He later crossed paths with her at another restaurant called Chez Marius Pizzeria, described as a popular snack place where young men rev their engines outside, trying to impress those inside. Elen was meant to spend that night and the following day with her aunt at a home that she was babysitting at. At one point that evening, it seems that she asked her brother Yves if he could take her home so that she could grab a couple items, such as their jacket and a book, before they headed back to where her friends were at. Eventually, as it was getting late, Elen would offer to walk one of her female friends partway home. The two would eventually split up outside the Mon Repos motel. After saying their goodbyes, she would turn around and head back towards where her aunt was staying. This departure happening around 11:15 p.m. Elen would walk back west on Avenue Bourgogne, past the Canal Chambly Park, which was a poorly lit street with an expansive park. On the other side of the river, the park continued, which she may have taken as a shortcut towards Rue Mignon to get to her destination. As morning came, her aunt would end up calling the family home to say that Elen had not arrived at all, which prompted her father Roland to call the police station to ask if there had been any car accidents during the night. Chambly was a quiet town, and no one had expected something heinous to have happened. But meanwhile, around 8:20 a.m., a woman looking out the window of her apartment would notice a lifeless body between the trees in a park bordering the Chambly Canal, near the Chambly Monument. The young woman was said to be half naked, except for her shirt, which was pulled up to her arms, and she was severely beaten. She was wearing a Timex watch, a necklace, and was lying on her back. Clothing was found next to her body, including blue jeans, a sweater of the same color, an earring in the grass, a plastic cup, a pack of Export A cigarettes, and a box of Chiclets gum. The woman had been strangled, and it was believed at the time that she was also SA'd. By afternoon, Roland was identifying his youngest daughter in a morgue. Due to the state of her body, he was only shown her face from her eyes up. Elen's purse was also noted to be missing. When it comes to her shoes, there are two different accounts to the story. One says that her shoes were simply missing. The other says that her shoes were next to her body with her socks neatly placed on them. But in the second account, her shoelaces were missing. According to Nicole, investigators would ask the family if Elen ever wore shoelaces. In another report, it's also stated that Nicole had saw her sister's body. However, there is contradicting information because they said that they didn't let the family see her body due to the state it was in, that her father only seen her body from her eyes up. However, in the report where Nicole saw her sister's body, it was noted that there was a thin line along her neck from strangulation. And if that's true, it kind of hints towards the idea that her shoelaces might have been used to strangle her. But let me know down below if you know between the stories which one may be true, because a lot of the stuff seems to be translated from French. We have to remember this case happened in Quebec. So even watching some of the interviews, it's hard to understand what they're talking about, the more recent ones, because you have to use YouTube's translator, which isn't always that accurate. But from the articles that I have found that are written in English, this is what is known. But let me know if there are any locals or anyone that speaks French, if you can give us more information and more details. There was also mention in an interview that Nicole did in 2015 that Helene might have gotten an elbow to the back of her head, but it was noted overall that her body was just severely battered. What's also strange in this case is that the autopsy allegedly confirmed that her death was by strangulation. However, they did not find any evidence of SA. However, it was noted that, quote, she had been cruelly struck with multiple bite marks on her body, especially a breast, end quote, which then led to the conclusion of a sex crime. I think it's also very important to note that her body was found on the other side of the river from where she was coming from, meaning she made it across the bridge before something may have happened. There's also speculation if maybe she was dragged into the woods there. Newspapers at the time would begin to report that there were dozens of anxious citizens lining the street where the crime was committed. And these citizens were anxious to learn what may have happened. And of course, since this was quite a small town, the rumors began to swirl. Was Helene killed at random, or was it something planned? Was it someone who saw her that night, or someone who had targeted her for a while? Did she witness something that she shouldn't have? And why had she started telling Nicole to be safe all the time? Could that just have been a coincidence? Helene's funeral was described as tense. Everyone was still trying to figure out what happened. And they thought that maybe whoever did it would come by the funeral home. And when someone would end up leaving a bouquet of flowers but didn't attach a card to them, everyone was suspicious. But Helene was not the only woman who would end up being found dead in the days following. Just 10 days after Helene was killed, 2 young men walking by a bushy area next to a train station near Montreal would find the body of 34-year-old Catherine Hawkes below a tree. Her clothing was removed and piled nearby. She had been beaten, essayed, and left to die. On top of that, the night that Catherine had died, a man had called the Montreal police twice from a payphone to tell them that he had attacked a woman and left her body where Catherine was later found. Despite those calls, her body was only found the following day after those 2 men stumbled upon it. Honestly, what poor follow-up work from the police when you receive a call that a woman has been murdered and you don't even go check the area. A month later, the body of 23-year-old Denise Bazinet was found in a ditch by Highway 35 near the St. Luc exit, less than 15 minutes away from Chambly. Police would begin an investigation, however, they would quickly stop. And since the family was said to be poor, they didn't have any money for a lawyer or to pay someone to help look into her death, her case still remains unsolved. Despite these 2 murders happening so close in time to Helene's, police have said that there is no connection. Multiple other women would also be found dead over time around this area, which have led a lot of people to speculate if there was a serial killer there. Let me know if you want me to dive into those cases as well. Meanwhile, regarding Helene's death, the entire town was in turmoil. This is something that no one had expected to happen there, especially to a young girl who didn't have any problems with anyone. She had a great reputation in town. Her family was also in shambles. Her sister Nicole saying that she had nightmares for months on end. Their little brother, who was only 11 at the time, was being sheltered from all of this. And 46-year-old Roland was taking it the hardest. He even quit his job and never returned. Instead, he would spend the rest of his life carrying out his own searches. It's said that Roland would walk around Chambly, often eavesdropping in restaurants and bars. He also urged police to drag the entire canal next to where his daughter's body was found in case there was some kind of clues in there. He just couldn't sleep. He kept binders full of information, and he was so frustrated to the point that he would even punch the walls in anger after long days of not finding anything. And 5 years later, Lise and Roland's marriage fell apart, but he would still continue to search. And sadly, those weeks would turn to months and turn to years, and they would eventually turn to decades with no answers and no information. 32 years after Helene's murder in 2009 would be one of the last times it was noted that police contacted the family. An officer would show up to Nicole's home to show her photos of jewelry, asking her if any of them were Helene's. But so much time had passed that Nicole couldn't say for sure. On the 38-year anniversary of Helene's murder, provincial police would open a command post in the town, hoping to entice anyone with information to finally come forward. Her sister Nicole and a friend would also plaster the town with her photo in hopes to jog people's memory.
8 years, the South Shore family is still looking for closure. It's been that long since Helene Monast was killed. The police are still stumped as to what happened to her. Today, they set up a command post hoping someone will come forward. Sean Henry reports.
When Elen Monast's naked body was found in this park 38 years ago, the killer didn't just take her life. They took away a sense of peace from those who loved her. People like Monast's childhood friend and next-door neighbor, Morin.
Le soir, je sors pas souvent seule.
Morin rarely goes out alone at night. She says it's made her an overprotective mother. In turn, her daughter is the same way.
La vie, c'est difficile en sachant pas qui on rencontre sur notre chemin.
Helen's sister Nicole is often suspicious of people she passes on the street. Their father carries Helen's picture in his wallet, but doesn't talk about it anymore. The SQ has set up a command post today. They have no idea who could have killed Elen Monast, but they hope someone comes forward.
Peut-être le suspect aussi.
After all these years, Sergeant Ingrid Asselin says maybe the suspect may even want to clear their conscience. The night Elen Monast disappeared, she was celebrating a milestone, her 18th birthday. She and her friends were at a bar. Then she left. Helen's sister tells me that on the night of September 10th, 1977, Hélène was walking this way along Avenue Bourgogne with a friend. They parted ways right about here in front of Motel Mon Repos. Then Hélène was supposed to walk back that way to go to a relative's house. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. It's not clear whether Elen Monast cut through the park. Police say she could very well have been dragged there and murdered. Either way, her body was found the next morning.
Malgré toute l'information qui a été transmise aux enquêteurs.
Asselin says despite tips coming into investigators over the years, the case remains unsolved.
Ça fait mal, ça fait vraiment mal.
Nicole Monast and her family don't only want to know who, they want to know why. And perhaps once those questions are answered, they can finally move on.
In around 2016, Nicole was told that police were conducting polygraph tests on certain people who were initially interviewed following her sister's body being found. They were also analyzing photos from Helen's funeral. But that was almost 10 years ago as I'm filming this video, and the case is still not solved. Nicole has not stopped fighting for answers for her sister. Over the years, it's said that promising leads have either fizzled out or been debunked. Petitions to politicians have gone unanswered. A request to the town to make a small plaque in honor of Helene was also denied. Her calls for better lighting on that street and in that park where her sister was killed were also ignored, which honestly doesn't sound like a big ask. Nicole says her brothers were more so the type to move on. They were just trying to forget and move forward, but she has spent these years fighting. And she admitted that there were days that she wished that she could as well, just move on from it all. But she couldn't help hoping for an end and answers. Their father would eventually begin to suffer from Alzheimer's, and as he got older, would begin living in an old age home that was near where his daughter's body was found. Photos of Helene were said to hang on the walls of his room, including the one of Helene blowing out the candles at her 17th birthday. Their mother, Lise, would eventually pass away from liver complications without knowing what happened to her daughter. But there is still time for her siblings to get the answers that their parents never did. There is still a $2,000 reward in place for any information that leads to Helene's killer being found. And if you know something, please say something. Please give this family the answers that they have been waiting decades for. I'll have the information to contact the authorities in the description bar below. But that is all the information we have on Helene's case. There isn't much, but what we do know is very interesting for sure. And police clearly know a lot more than we know, and it really makes me wonder. Could this have been a targeted attack, or was this a motive of opportunity? A young girl walking through a park in the middle of the night. But why did this individual decide to strike in this small town? Could it have been because people were more trusting? Young girls would walk through dark parks there at night without a care. This case is even more so tragic and sad because Helene was killed on the night of her birthday. She had had such an amazing night. She had such an amazing day celebrating with her family and her friends. And then for her to be so brutally murdered on that night when she was just walking home, it's just a whole nother level of sadistic. And at the end of the day, I truly hope Helene gets justice. No one deserves to go through what she went through that evening, which is probably so much worse than we know, or any of us could even imagine. And I truly, truly hope she gets justice. So again, if you have any information, please contact the authorities. And as always, I hope you all stay safe out there, lock your windows and doors, and I hope to see you in the next video.